The morning sun barely reached the courthouse steps, casting long, cold shadows across the polished marble. Yet Emma felt its warmth like a distant memory, a faint reminder of happier mornings that now seemed like a lifetime ago. Today wasn't just another day. It was the day that would decide her daughter's future, the culmination of years of struggle, sleepless nights, and quiet sacrifices that only a mother could truly understand. Each step she took up the courthouse stairs felt heavier than the last, as though the weight of judgment pressed against her shoulders, bending her spirit under an invisible burden. Her daughter, Lily, held tightly to her hand, her small fingers curled around a soft, worn rabbit, stuffed with patches from years of love. That rabbit had been her constant companion, her silent witness to the nights Emma cried in exhaustion and fear. Emma looked down at Lily, taking in her daughter's wide, innocent eyes, which reflected a mixture of hope, worry, and the unshakable trust only a child could offer. This wasn't just a legal battle. It was a fight for love, safety, and stability, things that money, social status, or even influence could never buy. This fight was raw, personal, and irreplaceable. Emma drew a deep breath as they entered the courthouse lobby, its high ceilings echoing faintly with the footsteps of other early visitors. The smell of polished wood, leather, and faint antiseptic filled the air. It was a scent that usually felt formal and almost oppressive, but today it seemed heavier, more ominous, as if the walls themselves were pressing down on her, waiting to judge her before anyone even spoke. Her heart pounded, each beat resonating like a drum in her chest. She could feel every memory of struggle surfacing, every whispered promise she had made to Lily in the quiet darkness of their tiny apartment. "I'll protect you, no matter what. I'll keep you safe." Those words, once a private vow, were about to face the ultimate test. Emma's mind wandered briefly to her extended family, her sisters and siblings who had been pillars of strength, or, at times, complicated sources of tension. Her eldest sister, Rachel, who had always taken the role of protector seriously, had driven in early that morning to be by Emma's side. "You don't have to do this alone," Rachel had said, her hand gripping Emma's shoulder as they parked near the courthouse. Rachel's presence was a shield in itself. She had a way of speaking that made even the most intimidating spaces feel slightly less threatening. Then there was Mariah, the free-spirited sister whose laughter could brighten even the darkest room. Mariah had insisted on bringing Lily a small notebook and colored pencils to distract her during the waiting periods. "If she's drawing rainbows while they argue about legal stuff, she wins," Mariah had joked, but her eyes betrayed the worry she felt for both mother and child. Each sister brought her own way of loving Emma, balancing seriousness with levity, showing that support came in multiple forms, even if the path there was messy. They walked through the courthouse corridors, past rows of wooden benches and the faint murmur of clerks typing at counters. Emma's steps slowed when they approached the courtroom doors. She could hear the low hum of people preparing inside, the rustle of papers, whispered last-minute instructions, and the soft echo of leather shoes across polished floors. Emma adjusted her grip on Lily's hand, noticing how small and fragile it felt in hers. For all the years she had protected Lily from scraped knees, stormy nights, and frightening encounters with the world, now her little hand would need to guide her through something infinitely more complex, something cold, calculated, and impersonal. The courtroom doors glowed ahead, massive oak panels with brass handles that gleamed even in the dim light of early morning. Emma paused for a moment, inhaling deeply and letting the sounds of the hallway fade into the background. Her sisters flanked her, providing both silent support and quiet encouragement. "Remember," Rachel whispered, "you are the strongest person in this room, and Lily already knows it." Mariah nodded, adding softly, "And if Emma tries to forget, just let your love speak for itself." Inside the courtroom, the walls seemed colder than she remembered. The high ceilings amplified every whisper, every shuffle of papers, and the creak of the wooden benches. The faint murmur of voices felt distant, almost unreal, like a world Emma had only glimpsed in dreams and nightmares. The room was structured, formal, and intimidating, but she tried to focus on the one thing that mattered: Lily. Her daughter's small face, still clutching the rabbit tightly, seemed to radiate a quiet strength Emma hadn't expected. Perhaps children, in their innocence, possessed a bravery adults often overlooked. Emma's heart pounded as she took her seat, sitting close enough to Lily to feel the rhythm of her tiny heartbeat. She looked around and noticed other families, some with similar tension etched into their faces, others with expressions of resignation. Each person here had a story, a reason to hope or fear. Yet Emma felt a unique burden that came from loving someone wholly and unconditionally. She recalled nights spent comforting Lily after nightmares, the nights when bills went unpaid and food was scarce, the moments when she stayed awake, praying that tomorrow would be easier. All of those small, private sacrifices had led to this day. Rachel and Mariah settled on either side, offering what little comfort the space allowed. Emma's thoughts drifted briefly to her other siblings, some supportive, others distant. In the past, family gatherings had been loud, chaotic affairs, with voices overlapping, opinions clashing, and emotions running high. Yet in moments like this, even the complex family dynamics seemed to converge toward a single point: love. All the arguments, rivalries, and misunderstandings faded against the larger purpose of protecting Lily. Emma could feel the tension building as the judge entered the courtroom, the gavel striking a sharp note that silenced every whisper. Her eyes instinctively found Lily's, and she saw the trust her daughter had placed in her, the kind of trust that could either falter under pressure or strengthen under adversity. Emma took a deep breath, straightening her posture, as if physically carrying the weight of her past struggles would prepare her for what was to come. Her thoughts turned to the future, to the moment she dreamed of: a small, safe home for Lily, laughter filling rooms rather than tears, bedtime stories told without fear, mornings where breakfast was guaranteed, and nights where Emma could rest without worrying about unforeseen hardships. Those dreams, fragile and precious, were what she would fight for today. And in her heart, she knew that this fight wasn't just legal, it was spiritual. Every word she spoke, every gesture she made, had to convey not only truth, but the unbreakable bond of a mother's love. For Emma, the courthouse was more than a place of law. It was a crucible, a space where the past, present, and future converged. She remembered the first time she had ever walked these halls for a minor dispute over housing, the nervousness she had felt, the uncertainty, the doubt. But now, with Lily by her side and Rachel and Mariah lending quiet strength, she realized that the outcome wasn't the only measure of success. Her courage, her persistence, and her unwavering commitment to her daughter were victories in themselves. The morning light streaming through the tall windows hit the courtroom floor in patches, casting soft rectangles of hope onto the polished wood. Emma's gaze lingered on these patches, imagining them as symbols of the clarity and protection she wanted to provide for Lily. She tightened her grip on the rabbit, a small gesture to ground herself in the present, and whispered softly, more to herself than anyone else, "We can do this. I'll protect you, always." Lily squeezed her hand in response, a tiny, unspoken affirmation that they were together in this, come what may. The courtroom was filled with a low hum of anticipation, the air thick with tension, and the faint scent of polished wood and ink from the legal documents spread across the tables. Emma sat upright, trying to steady her breath, her hands tightly clasped around Lily's small ones. Her heart was a drumbeat, relentless, echoing in her ears louder than the whispered conversations around her. Every fiber of her being screamed that this day would define more than a custody ruling. It would define her daughter's entire future. The prosecutor rose, a figure of sharp precision, his polished shoes clicking against the floor as he moved toward the center. His voice was crisp and unwavering, each word delivered with the authority of the law, yet cold in its detachment. "The evidence shows," he began, his eyes briefly scanning the courtroom, "that the mother has faced challenges in maintaining stable housing, consistent employment, and a structured environment for her child. While her intentions may be commendable, the welfare of the child requires us to consider these factors." Emma's spirit tightened. She had known these accusations would come, had rehearsed her rebuttals 1,000 times in front of mirrors and in whispered prayers late at night, but hearing them aloud with Lily watching made the sting sharper, the weight of judgment heavier. She could feel a flush rising in her cheeks, anger mixing with despair, but she forced herself to remain still. Every word the prosecutor spoke seemed to attempt to diminish the years of dedication, the countless nights spent rocking a crying child back to sleep, the days when she worked double shifts just to put food on the table.
Her sisters, Rachel and Mariah, were a steady presence beside her. Rachel's hand rested lightly on Emma's back, a subtle gesture of unwavering support. Mariah's eyes darted between the prosecutor and Emma, a flicker of anger and worry crossing her face. Both sisters understood Emma's life in ways the courtroom could never measure. They knew of the nights Emma had gone without sleep, the silent tears she shed in the darkness, and the quiet courage it took to face the world every day while nurturing a child on her own. Emma's mind wandered to those private moments that no one else could see, the early mornings when Lily would wake with tears in her eyes from nightmares, and Emma would cradle her, whispering, "You're safe, I'm here." She remembered evenings when the power had gone out and she had read stories by candlelight, turning each page with dramatic flair to spark laughter instead of fear. She thought of the small victories, the first time Lily had learned to tie her shoes, the first day of school where Emma had walked her hand in hand, masking the anxiety she felt inside. These memories were her armor now, the unspoken evidence of her capability and love. The prosecutor's words continued, listing challenges, emphasizing errors and inconsistencies in Emma's past. The mother has, on several occasions, relied on family support for childcare and housing, he said, his tone neutral but cutting. Emma's chest tightened at the mention of family, knowing that the very same sisters who sat beside her, who had been her pillars of strength, were also being painted as crutches by the legal system. She swallowed hard, holding back tears. It was not weakness to rely on family. It was strength. It was proof of resilience and adaptability. As the accusations mounted, Emma felt a surge of doubt creeping into her mind. What if the courtroom saw only the mistakes and not the love? What if years of hardship were used as evidence against her rather than proof of her resilience? She glanced at Lily, whose small hand still clutched the rabbit, and felt a renewed sense of determination. Lily's trust, her quiet faith in Emma's protection, was a force stronger than fear. Every argument the prosecutor made was a test, and Emma realized that the stakes were higher than she had ever imagined. Rachel whispered softly, "Focus on the truth, Emma. Let them see your heart, not just your history." Mariah nodded, adding, "They can't measure love with papers or statistics. Remember that." Emma inhaled deeply, letting the words of her sisters anchor her, reminding her that she was not alone, and that the love she carried was visible in every action, in every decision she had made for Lily. The prosecutor concluded his statements and returned to his seat. A brief pause filled the room, like the quiet before a storm. Emma's attorney, a calm and steady presence with a reassuring smile, began preparing to speak. Emma looked down at Lily, whose eyes were wide but trusting. She realized that this moment required more than legal knowledge. It required vulnerability, honesty, and the courage to let love speak where words alone might fail. She thought of her other siblings, the ones who couldn't be here. Some had distanced themselves over years of disagreements. Others were occupied with their own lives, unaware of the intensity of Emma's struggle. Yet even their absence was a reminder of the responsibility Emma carried. She was not only fighting for Lily's present, but for her future, a future that needed stability, nurturing, and unconditional love, no matter the opinions or judgments of strangers. As her attorney began to speak, Emma closed her eyes for a brief moment, imagining all the night she had held Lily close, whispering promises in the dark. The memories flooded her senses, the sound of a lullaby hummed in a quiet room, the feeling of a small body curling against hers for comfort, the way Lily's tiny hand had always found hers when fear arose. These were the moments that defined their bond, moments that could not be quantified or dismissed by paperwork or court arguments. Emma opened her eyes and saw the judge watching, pen poised, observing every subtle gesture, every flicker of emotion. She felt the pressure of his gaze, the weight of his authority, and for a moment, doubt threatened to take hold. But she reminded herself that this was not a battle to prove perfection. It was a battle to prove love, dedication, and an unbreakable bond. Every challenge she had faced, every sacrifice she had made, was proof of her commitment. Her sisters remained steadfast, their presence a silent shield. Rachel whispered again, "Your story matters. Don't let them forget that." Mariah squeezed Lily's shoulder lightly, a gesture of comfort and encouragement. Emma nodded, feeling a renewed strength rising from the simple act of family solidarity.
She had built a network of love around her child, a fortress that could withstand judgment and scrutiny because it was rooted in care, devotion, and resilience. As the courtroom prepared for testimony, Emma's thoughts returned to the little daily victories, the mornings when breakfast was ready even when sleep had been scarce, the nights when she had stayed awake to comfort Lily during storms, the quiet encouragements whispered into her daughter's ear as she faced challenges in school and life. These were the moments that could not be captured in charts or reports, moments that only a mother and child could share. The prosecutor's tone had shifted slightly, now focusing on the logistics of care and stability rather than the moral implications. But Emma saw through it. Every word he spoke was intended to sway the judgment in the absence of emotional context, to paint a life as flawed, when in reality it was lived with courage and love. She felt a surge of resolve. These accusations, as harsh as they were, could not erase the truth that had been evident in every hug, every bedtime story, every act of quiet devotion over the years. Rachel leaned closer, whispering, "Remember, the truth isn't always on paper. It's in your heart, in Lily's eyes, in the life you've built together." Emma squeezed her sister's hand in return, a silent acknowledgement of shared strength. She glanced at Mariah, whose playful smirk offered a reminder that even in the gravest moments, hope and love could shine through. When the room finally fell silent and the judge called the proceedings to order,
Emma felt the gravity of the moment settle over her. The accusations, the doubts, and the tension were all part of a larger test, not just of her ability to parent, but of her capacity to stand tall under pressure, to let love speak louder than fear or judgment. Lily's small hand in hers reminded her that this fight was bigger than herself. It was a fight for the life, happiness, and security of someone who depended on her completely. Emma realized, as the first witness was called, that the courtroom could scrutinize documents, review histories, and debate logistics, but it could never touch the essence of her love, the countless nights spent protecting and nurturing Lily, the unbreakable bond that had carried them through hardship after hardship. And with that realization came a calm determination, a certainty that whatever came next, she would stand firm, guided by the most powerful force she had ever known, a mother's unwavering love for her child. The courtroom air seemed to thicken as Emma's turn approached. Every shuffle of paper, every cough from the audience felt magnified, echoing in the hollow spaces of her chest. The judge's eyes were calm yet piercing, observing her, weighing her, as though he could see the entirety of her life in a single glance. Emma could feel the weight of history pressing against her, the countless decisions and sacrifices she had made for Lily, suddenly distilled into minutes of testimony. Her sisters flanked her, Rachel with her steady presence, Mariah with her playful yet determined energy, both silently urging her to find her voice. Emma's gaze shifted to Lily, whose small eyes reflected both fear and unwavering trust. Lily clutched her rabbit tightly, her tiny fingers curling around the worn fabric as if holding on to hope itself. Emma took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of her child's hand anchor her in the present. She rose slowly, her chair creaking under the sudden movement, and straightened her shoulders as if aligning her resolve with the gravity of the moment. Her attorney nodded slightly, signaling that it was time. Emma looked around the courtroom, taking in the faces of strangers who would judge her, of family who supported her, of her child who depended on her courage. Then she began. "I may not have had the easiest life," she said, her voice low but steady, trembling only slightly under the weight of emotion. "I've made mistakes, I've stumbled, and I've faced challenges that sometimes felt insurmountable. But every choice I have made, every sleepless night, every sacrifice, has been for one person, my daughter Lily." A hush fell over the courtroom. Emma felt the eyes of the judge, the prosecutor, and the audience fix on her, yet she did not falter. She looked down at Lily, whose gaze was unwavering. That look, filled with trust and love, gave her the courage to continue. "I faced hardships," Emma continued, her voice growing stronger. "But through it all, I have fought to provide Lily with love, stability, and safety. I may not be perfect, but my love is unwavering. It is the force that guides every step I take, the light that leads us through darkness, the promise I make every single day, that she will never go without, never face fear alone, and never doubt that she is cherished." Rachel reached out, brushing a stray strand of hair from Emma's face, a subtle gesture that reminded Emma she was not alone. Mariah leaned forward slightly, nodding encouragingly, her eyes glistening with emotion. Their presence was a silent chorus, lending her strength when her own might have wavered. Emma's mind wandered briefly to the early years of Lily's life, the moments that had defined their bond. The nights when Lily had cried from nightmares, the mornings when Emma had carried her tired body to the bus stop despite exhaustion, the countless bedtime stories told by candlelight during blackouts. These memories, vivid and visceral, reinforced the truth Emma wanted the courtroom to see, that love could not be measured by paperwork, schedules, or statistics. It was lived, experienced, and shared in the quiet, everyday acts of devotion. She paused, her voice catching slightly, as she let the weight of the moment sink in. The prosecutor sat silently, pen in hand, observing her with clinical detachment. Emma realized that he could only see fragments of her life, pieces of a puzzle that would never fully capture the depth of her commitment. But she did not speak for him. She spoke for Lily. "I ask you," Emma said, her voice firm now, carrying both conviction and vulnerability, "to consider not only the mistakes I have made, but the love I have shown. Consider the nights I stayed awake when she was sick, the days I worked multiple jobs just to ensure she had a safe home, the countless times I held her hand and whispered, 'You are safe, my love.' These moments define us more than any error could. They define my ability to love, nurture, and protect my daughter." The courtroom remained silent,
the weight of her words settling into the space like a tangible presence. Emma felt a surge of emotion, a mix of fear, hope, and determination. She thought of the future she envisioned for Lily, mornings filled with laughter rather than anxiety, nights spent in warmth and comfort rather than fear, days where her child could flourish and grow under the guidance of a mother who would never stop fighting for her. Rachel leaned in again, whispering softly, "Let them see the heart that can't be broken." Mariah added, "And the love that can't be measured." Emma nodded subtly, letting the words of her sisters fortify her. She straightened further, feeling the invisible weight of generations of women before her, strong, resilient, protective, guiding her voice and her courage. "I know that no one is perfect," Emma continued, her voice now resonating with quiet authority. "But love, true love, is imperfect. It bends, it struggles, it sacrifices, and it fights. I have loved my daughter with every fiber of my being, and I will continue to do so, regardless of the obstacles. Lily's well-being, her happiness, and her safety are my guiding stars. I stand here today to ask for the chance to continue nurturing her life, to give her a future filled with stability, joy, and love that can weather any storm." She glanced at Lily, who had begun to fidget slightly, but still maintained eye contact with her mother. Emma's heart swelled at the sight. This was why she fought, why she endured sleepless nights, why she carried the burdens of life with quiet determination. For Lily. Emma's attorney rose to add supporting details, presenting a timeline of care, schooling, and medical checkups, but Emma's words lingered in the air long after. They were not just testimony. They were a manifestation of years of love and struggle, a plea that transcended legal language. She thought of her sisters again, Rachel, the steadfast protector, who had taught her the importance of standing firm, Mariah, the free spirit, who had reminded her to find hope and joy even in dark moments. Their voices, their encouragement, their unwavering belief in her ability to fight for Lily's future strengthened Emma from within. Emma took a final breath, steadying herself, and looked directly at the judge. "I ask you to see my life, not just my mistakes, to see the countless moments of love and protection, the sacrifices made without recognition, the resilience built to hardship. I am not perfect, but my heart is wholly dedicated to my daughter. I stand here today, asking for the chance to continue guiding her, protecting her, and loving her with all that I am. This is not just a plea for custody. It is a plea for life, stability, and the continuation of a bond that has endured every challenge imaginable." Her voice quivered once, but only once. Then it steadied, carrying with it the full weight of her experience, her love, and her determination. The courtroom seemed to hold its breath, as if the walls themselves had paused to listen. Lily's grip on the rabbit tightened, mirroring her mother's resolve, and Emma felt a sense of unity, a reminder that no matter the outcome, they were in this together. As she sat down, Rachel placed a comforting hand on her shoulder, and Mariah leaned close, whispering, "You spoke your truth. That's all that matters." Emma closed her eyes briefly, drawing strength from her sister's presence and the knowledge that she had done everything in her power to advocate for her child. Even the prosecutor, as he returned to his seat, seemed momentarily affected, not by legal arguments, but by the raw honesty and emotion Emma had conveyed. The judge reviewed his notes, and Emma felt a tremor of anticipation. She knew that the words she had spoken were not merely legal testimony. They were an embodiment of love, hope, and resilience, resonating far beyond the confines of the courtroom. For Emma, this was more than a plea for custody. It was a declaration of the unbreakable bond between mother and child, a testament to the sacrifices that define parenthood, and a statement that love, no matter how challenged, could prevail. And as she glanced once more at Lily, who returned her gaze with trust and courage, Emma realized that whatever happened next, she had already fought with every ounce of her being. She had spoken her truth, and that truth was rooted in the strongest force in the universe, a mother's unwavering love for her child. The courtroom fell into a heavy silence. Every pen scratch, every cough, every rustle of paper seemed magnified in Emma's ears. Time had slowed, stretching each heartbeat into a drumbeat that echoed the rhythm of anticipation, fear, and hope. She sat rigidly, gripping Lily's hand with a quiet ferocity, feeling the tiny warmth of her daughter's skin grounding her in the present. The rabbit's worn ears pressed against Lily's chest, a comforting constant amid the storm of uncertainty. Rachel sat on Emma's right, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Her jaw was set, eyes sharp, reflecting the intensity of the situation, the same intensity she had carried through family crises for decades. Mariah, on the left, fidgeted slightly, but maintained her focus, whispering softly to Lily,
"We're going to be okay. Mommy's words have power." Her energy, a mix of gentle reassurance and fiery determination, lent Emma strength she could feel radiating through the small circle of family around her. The judge, a figure of calm authority, finally addressed the courtroom, his voice echoing softly but with commanding presence. "We have heard all testimony, reviewed the documents, and considered the evidence. We will now proceed to deliberation." The words, though procedural, hit Emma like a wave of reality. This was it. The moment where years of love, sacrifice, and struggle would be weighed against cold logic and legal precedent. Emma's mind began to replay every single memory, every night she had stayed awake with Lily during storms, every moment she had offered comfort when the world seemed unkind. She recalled mornings when bills were unpaid but breakfast was ready, the little victories that were invisible to the world but monumental in their impact. The courtroom could quantify facts, review schedules, and analyze stability, but it could never fully measure the depth of a mother's love. As the jury, or in custody cases, the judge, reviewed the evidence, Emma felt a surge of doubt threatened to overtake her. What if the court saw only the errors, the missteps in housing, the lapses in employment, the minor stumbles of a life lived imperfectly but wholeheartedly? Her chest tightened, and for a moment she imagined losing Lily's hand from hers, the rabbit slipping from her daughter's grasp, the courtroom fading into a blur of disappointment and defeat. Rachel leaned slightly closer, whispering, "Focus on the truth. Remember your strength." Her voice was steady, a lifeline in a stormy sea. Mariah squeezed Lily's shoulder gently, offering a silent message of hope. Emma exhaled slowly, drawing power from the support of her sisters and the unspoken trust in Lily's gaze. Their presence reminded her that she was not fighting alone. They were a family, united by love, determination, and resilience. Minutes, or was it hours, passed with torturous slowness. Emma could hear the soft shuffling of papers, the murmurs of the court clerks, the faint whisper of other families waiting for their turn. Each sound heightened her awareness of the gravity of the moment. She looked down at Lily, whose eyes were wide but brave, reflecting the courage Emma had taught her through small daily rituals of reassurance. "We have endured every storm together," she thought. "We can endure this one too." Her mind drifted briefly to the earlier days when she had first become a mother, the nights of fear and uncertainty, the overwhelming responsibility, the moments of pure joy when Lily smiled, and the first steps, first words, first laughter, each memory a reminder of why this fight mattered so deeply.
These weren't mere recollections. They were evidence of a life built on care, attention, and unwavering love, the kind of love that could not be captured by schedules or statistics. The judge rose from his chair, signaling that deliberation was concluded. Emma's stomach twisted, a blend of anticipation and terror. The gavel struck once, sharp and final, reverberating through the room. Silence fell again, heavy and expectant. Emma's pulse thundered in her ears. Lily's hand trembled slightly in hers, a subtle reflection of shared anxiety. She leaned down and whispered, "We're together, no matter what." Lily's small nod was all the affirmation she needed. Then came the words Emma had prayed for in countless sleepless nights. After reviewing all evidence, testimony, and the best interest of the child, the phrase seemed to stretch indefinitely, each syllable a delicate balance between fear and hope. Emma's heart raced, each beat louder than the last. Rachel gripped her hand tightly. Mariah leaned forward with her eyes fixed on the judge, and Lily's breath caught in her throat. Custody is granted to the mother. The gavel struck again, a sound that seemed to shake the walls and release the tension from the room. Emma felt her knees weaken, a rush of relief and joy surging through her. Tears flowed freely, unrestrained, as she drew Lily into a tight embrace. "We're home, sweetheart," she whispered, voice breaking with emotion. "We're safe." The courtroom, typically a place of strict procedure and cold logic, seemed to exhale alongside them. Strangers, moved by the raw display of love and emotion, watched silently, some dabbing their eyes, some leaning forward in respectful acknowledgement. For a brief moment, Emma felt the enormity of the love she carried reflected back at her, not as judgment, but as recognition. Rachel placed her hands on Emma's shoulders, her face a mixture of pride and relief. "You did it," she said softly. "You never gave up." Mariah leaned close, her voice barely a whisper. "We always knew your love would win." Emma looked around at her sisters, her allies, her family who had carried her when she could not stand alone. Their presence magnified her joy and reinforced the truth that love, unyielding and steadfast, had prevailed. Emma held Lily close, feeling the warmth of her child's body, the soft rhythm of her breath, the quiet reassurance that they had endured together and emerged victorious. The years of struggle, the nights of doubt, the moments of exhaustion, all converged into this singular, radiant moment of triumph. She realized more profoundly than ever that victory wasn't just legal, it was emotional, spiritual, and relational. It was the affirmation of a bond that could never be broken. As they prepared to leave the courtroom, Emma looked at the sunlight streaming through the tall windows. The light seemed brighter, warmer, almost celebratory, as if it had waited for this moment to shine upon them. Lily's small fingers remained intertwined with hers, and the rabbit still hugged tightly to her chest, a symbol of comfort and continuity. The world outside was the same, yet subtly transformed, brighter, filled with promise, and colored by the triumph of love over adversity. Walking down the courthouse steps, surrounded by her sisters and her daughter, Emma felt the full weight of the moment. She had faced doubt, accusation, and the scrutiny of the legal system, yet she had remained steadfast. Her courage, nurtured by years of perseverance and strengthened by the support of family, had carried her through. Every step felt lighter than the first ones that morning, buoyed by hope and relief. Rachel leaned over and whispered, "We'll celebrate, but remember this feeling. Remember what it means to fight with love," Mariah added, "and to never let anyone make you doubt your worth as a mother." Emma nodded, letting their words settle within her like a protective shield. This was more than a victory in court. It was a victory of spirit, determination, and heart. As they exited into the sunlight, Lily looked up at her mother with a wide smile, a mixture of relief and pure joy. "Mommy," she said softly, "we did it." Emma laughed through tears, holding her daughter close. "Yes, sweetheart, we did it together." In that moment, Emma understood the profound truth of motherhood, that love is not measured by the absence of struggle, but by the perseverance, protection, and unwavering devotion through every storm. Today was a testament to that truth, a moment of victory not just for custody, but for the bond between a mother and child that nothing could sever. The gavel struck's final strike still echoed faintly in Emma's ears as she hugged Lily close, feeling the child's small heartbeat against her chest. Relief washed over her like a warm tide, melting the tension that had gripped her body for what felt like an eternity.
Her knees, weak from hours of sitting rigidly under the weight of anticipation, nearly buckled, but Lily's presence anchored her. She could feel the warmth of her daughter, the life she had fought so fiercely to protect, and it reminded her why every sleepless night, every worry-filled day, every sacrifice had been worth it. Around her, the courtroom remained silent, as if the walls themselves were acknowledging the raw intensity of the moment. Strangers, some with tears in their eyes, some shaking their heads in quiet awe, watched as a mother and daughter embraced. In that embrace was more than relief. It was triumph, resilience, and the undeniable proof that love, in its purest form, could overcome doubt, fear, and even the coldest judgments. Rachel leaned forward, her hand steadying Emma's shoulder. "You did it, Em. You never gave up," she whispered. Her voice carried a mixture of pride, relief, and exhaustion, emotions born not only from watching her sister fight, but from sharing years of family struggles, understanding just how much Emma had endured to reach this point. Mariah, standing slightly behind them, gave a soft laugh through her tears. "And Lily knew it all along," she said, ruffling the girl's hair playfully. "Your courage is contagious." Mariah's humor, light and hopeful, broke some of the tension, allowing the first genuine smiles to form in the room. Her presence reminded Emma that family could bring balance to even the heaviest moments, a mix of seriousness, levity, and unwavering support. Emma held Lily tighter, feeling the small rise and fall of her daughter's chest, the little breaths of relief and joy. "We're home, sweetheart," she whispered, her voice trembling. "We're safe now, always." Lily's arms wrapped around her neck, squeezing tightly, her soft voice responding. "I knew you'd fight for me, Mommy. I knew it." Emma laughed through her tears, the sound mingling with the faint hum of whispers in the courtroom. She thought of all the nights she had sat awake with Lily, rocking her through nightmares, reading stories by candlelight during blackouts, juggling jobs, bills, and worry, yet never faltering in her commitment. Each of those moments had led to this, proof that perseverance, hope, and unconditional love could not be dismissed. It wasn't legal documents or court arguments that had carried her through. It was the quiet, consistent acts of love that had built an unbreakable foundation. Even as she soaked in the victory, Emma's mind acknowledged the lingering tension that had characterized the past months and years. The fears, the doubts, the sleepless nights, they were not easily forgotten. But today, they were outweighed by the triumph of hope realized. Today, the system had recognized what Lily had always known,
that her mother's love was steadfast, protective, and unwavering. The judge's presence, still at the bench, seemed less intimidating now. His earlier stern demeanor gave way to a quiet respect, as if he had seen beyond the procedural and into the truth Emma had laid bare. He had weighed facts and evidence, yet Emma's voice, shaking, heartfelt, and honest, had left an impression that went beyond numbers and schedules. The victory was legal, yes, but also profoundly emotional and spiritual. Rachel squeezed Emma's shoulder again. Take a moment. Breathe it in. This is your life, your love, and your fight. You've won not because the law demanded it, but because your heart never wavered. Emma nodded, letting the weight of her sister's words settle. They were not empty platitudes. They were a reflection of shared history, of family solidarity, of generations of women who had fought, nurtured, and protected those they loved. Mariah chimed in softly. And now we get to celebrate it. Lily, you've got the best mommy in the world. Never forget it. Lily beamed. Her trust in her mother deepened by this moment of victory. It was a silent promise that whatever storms came in the future, the bond they shared would remain unbroken. As Emma looked around, she realized that the courtroom, a place typically cold and procedural, had transformed in her perception. It was no longer just a space of judgment. It had become a witness to the power of love, courage, and resilience. The polished wood walls, the high ceilings, and even the distant hum of clerks typing at desks now carried echoes of a triumph that transcended legal procedures, a triumph of the human spirit. Emma's eyes lingered on Lily's face. The girl's expression reflected pure joy, trust, and a sense of safety she had never truly felt before this moment. Emma knew that while legal custody was a significant milestone, it was the reassurance, the love, and the continuity of care that would define Lily's life. She had fought for something immeasurable, a future where her child could grow, explore, and thrive, knowing she was protected and loved beyond measure.
Rachel, standing close, brushed a stray strand of hair from Emma's face. Never doubt the impact of your love, she whispered. You've proven it today. Mariah added, and don't forget, this is just the beginning. The future is brighter than you imagined. Emma's gaze softened, tears still streaming, as she took in the words, the warmth of her family, and the security now firmly rooted around her daughter. Emma thought of all the nights she had wondered if her efforts were enough, if the world would recognize her devotion, if Lily's trust in her would ever be validated. Today, all those fears dissolved. Each challenge, every sleepless night, and every tear shed had culminated in a moment of clarity and triumph. The bond they shared had been recognized, not by strangers alone, but by the universe itself, reflected in sunlight streaming through the courtroom windows, in the quiet sighs of relief around them, and in the beat of Lily's heart against her own. As they prepared to leave the courtroom, Emma took a final deep breath, letting the sunlight fill her chest with warmth and hope. The weight of months of uncertainty lifted slightly, replaced by the buoyancy of a hard-won victory. She could feel Lily's small hand in hers, steady and trusting, a reminder of the future they now faced together. Rachel leaned in, whispering once more, "Remember this feeling, Emma. Remember the power of love, courage, and persistence. This is your story." Mariah squeezed her hand lightly, adding, "And let it guide you in everything you do from here on out." Emma nodded, absorbing the significance of the moment. They had emerged from the storm together, stronger, braver, and more united than ever. Outside the courthouse, the world seemed brighter, more vibrant. The sun's rays danced across the steps, illuminating their path, as if celebrating the triumph of a mother's devotion. Lily skipped slightly, the rabbit still clutched to her chest, and Emma laughed through tears, the sound mingling with the chatter of passerbys. They were free from the shadows of doubt, unburdened by fear, and surrounded by the love of family that had guided them to this moment. Emma hugged her sisters tightly. "We did it! We really did it!" she whispered, the words trembling with emotion. Rachel held her longer, eyes moist but proud, while Mariah laughed softly, a joyful, hopeful sound. Together they had navigated the storm, and together they would continue to protect and nurture Lily in the days ahead. As they walked away from the courthouse, Emma felt an unshakable sense of peace. The courtroom, the accusations, the sleepless nights, they were all part of a past that had been confronted and overcome. The future lay ahead, filled with promise, love, and the unbreakable bond of mother and child. She looked down at Lily, who smiled brightly up at her. "Mommy, we're going to be okay," Lily said softly. Emma's heart swelled beyond measure. "Yes, sweetheart, we're going to be more than okay," Emma whispered. "We're going to thrive, together." And with that, they stepped into the sunlight, leaving behind the echoes of the courtroom and stepping fully into a life shaped by love, courage, and the enduring power of family.